for motherhood, while James's sister Caroline would parade her 3 children around like trophies, shooting me pitying looks that felt more like daggers. The real breaking point came on our 5th anniversary. James came home late, as usual. I'd made reservations at the restaurant where he'd proposed. I'd bought a new dress, actually splurged on one for once. I was waiting by the door when he walked in, loosening his tie, barely looking at me. "I can't make dinner," he said flatly. "Emergency meeting with the Carlisle group. Dad set it up." "James, it's our anniversary. And the Carlisle deal is worth $40 million, Elena. Surely you can understand priorities." Something in his voice, that casual dismissal, made my chest tighten. When did I stop being your priority? He finally looked at me then. Really looked at me. And I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger. Worse. Indifference. "Maybe you never were," he said quietly, and left. I stood there in that new dress for an hour before I finally took it off, hung it in the closet, and cried myself to sleep in the guest room. The weeks that followed blurred together in a haze of lonely dinners and silent breakfasts. James was never home. When he was glued to his laptop or his phone. I threw myself into my work at the small firm, staying late, taking on extra projects, anything to avoid going home to an empty apartment. Then came the night that shattered everything. It was a Thursday in March. I'd left work early with a migraine, something that had been happening more frequently. I came home to an empty apartment, or so I thought. I headed to the bedroom to lie down, and that's when I heard it. Laughter. A woman's laughter, coming from James's home office. My heart stopped. I stood frozen in the hallway, my hand pressed against the wall for support. The office door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, I could see James leaning back in his chair, his phone pressed to his ear, a smile on his face that I hadn't seen in years. "I can't wait to see you either, Vanessa," he was saying, his voice warm, intimate. "No, she doesn't know. She's at work until 7. Of course, I'm sure. Elena's so wrapped up in her little projects, she barely notices when I'm gone. Next weekend, I told them I have a conference in Boston. We'll have the whole weekend. I know, baby. I know. Soon. I promise." I must have made a sound, a gasp or a whimper, because his head snapped toward the door. Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then I turned and walked away. I heard him calling after me, heard his footsteps, but I didn't stop. I grabbed my purse and my keys and walked out of that apartment. I walked for hours through Manhattan, the city lights blurring through my tears, until I finally found myself sitting on a bench in Central Park, numb and hollow. When I finally went back around midnight, James was waiting. He had the decency to look ashamed, at least. "Elena, we need to talk." "Who is she?" He hesitated. "Her name is Vanessa Aldridge. She works at Cooper and Associates. She's the daughter of one of Dad's business partners." Of course she was. Old money. The right family. Everything I wasn't. "How long?" 8 months. 8 months. While I'd been trying to save our marriage, planning anniversary dinners, he'd been building a whole other life. "Is she pregnant?" The question came out of nowhere. But somehow I knew. His silence was answer enough. "Get out," I said quietly. "Get your things and get out. I'll have my lawyer contact you in the morning." "Elena, please. Let me explain. Get out." He left. I sat in the dark living room until dawn, watching the sun rise over the city, and something in me crystallized. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fight. I was going to walk away with whatever dignity I had left. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. Richard Mitchell had his lawyers pressure me to sign quickly, offering a settlement that was insulting. $75,000 for 5 years of marriage. I refused. I had a small inheritance from my grandmother, enough to get a good lawyer. We settled on $200,000 and nothing else. No alimony, no property, no stake in James's career that I'd supported for 5 years while working at my dead-end firm. I just wanted out. I signed the papers on a Friday in April. By Monday, I was walking out of my small firm for the last time, my meager belongings in a box. I'd applied for a position at a larger firm in Chicago. Time to start over, I thought. New city, new life, new me. That's when I noticed it. Sitting in my car outside the office, looking at the calendar on my phone, counting back the weeks, my hands started shaking. No, it couldn't be. But when I stopped at a pharmacy on the way home and took 3 tests in the bathroom of a Starbucks, they all said the same thing. Positive. I was pregnant. I sat in that bathroom stall for 20 minutes, my mind racing. It must have happened that last time, maybe 6 weeks ago, one final attempt at connection before everything fell apart. James didn't know. The divorce was final. He was planning a life with Vanessa and their baby. I could tell him. I should tell him. That was the right thing to do. But then I thought about Richard and Patricia, about the way they'd looked at me like I was dirt on their expensive carpets, about how they'd parade Vanessa around as the golden daughter-in-law while treating me as an embarrassment, about how they'd fight for custody, drag me through courts, use their money and connections to paint me as an unfit mother from a lower-class background, about how I'd have to share my child with the man who'd betrayed me and the family who'd never wanted me. No, this child was mine alone, and I was going to disappear. I didn't go back to the apartment. I had my friend Sarah pack up my things and ship them to Chicago. I blocked James's number, his family's numbers, anyone connected to that old life. I withdrew my settlement money, closed my accounts, and vanished. The architecture firm in Chicago welcomed me with open arms. I was good at my work, always had been. I just never had the chance to prove it at that small Manhattan firm. I threw myself into projects with a desperate energy, designing buildings at night when I couldn't sleep, my growing belly pressed against the drafting table. I didn't tell anyone about the pregnancy until I couldn't hide it anymore. When my boss, Margaret Chen, finally noticed at 6 months, I told her I was a single mother by choice, that the father wasn't in the picture. She nodded, asked if I needed anything, and that was that. No judgment, no prying. The pregnancy was harder than I'd expected. Not physically, though the morning sickness and fatigue were brutal. Emotionally, there were nights when I'd lie awake, my hand on my belly, feeling the baby kick, and wonder if I was doing the right thing. If my child deserved to know their father, even if their father was a cheating bastard. But then I'd remember Vanessa, remember James's family, remember the way they dismissed and belittled me for 5 years, and my resolve would harden. This was my child, my second chance, my new beginning. I went into labor on a Wednesday evening in December, 3 weeks before my due date. Sarah, who'd moved to Chicago to be near me, drove me to the hospital. It was long and difficult, 32 hours of labor that left me exhausted and scared. But when they finally placed my son in my arms, with his tiny fists and his shock of dark hair, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete. I named him Daniel, after my father. Daniel Foster. Not Mitchell. Never Mitchell. The first year was brutal. Single motherhood is no joke. I went back to work after 12 weeks, grateful for Margaret's flexibility but guilty every time I left Daniel with the daycare. Money was tight. The settlement money was dwindling fast between rent, childcare, and baby expenses. I was exhausted, constantly sick from lack of sleep, running on coffee and determination. But I was happy. Genuinely, purely happy in a way I'd never been in my marriage. Daniel was a year old when Margaret called me into her office. I thought I was being fired. Instead, she offered me a promotion to senior architect and a 30% raise. One of my designs had won a regional award. Clients were specifically requesting me. "You're talented, Elena," Margaret said. "I don't know what you were doing in Manhattan, but you were wasted there. You have a real gift." That gift turned into more awards. More clients. By the time Daniel was 2, I was one of the top architects at the firm. By the time he was 3, I was a junior partner. Margaret became not just my boss but my mentor, teaching me not just about design but about business, about negotiation, about building a career in a male-dominated field. And then, 6 months ago, everything changed. Margaret decided to retire. She offered to sell me the firm. I didn't have that kind of money. But I had something better, connections I'd built over 3 years of excellent work. I pitched a buyout plan to 3 of my biggest clients who'd been wanting more control over their projects. Within 2 months, we'd restructured the company. Chen Foster Associates became Foster Design Group, with me as CEO and creative director. At 34 years old, I owned my own architecture firm. The irony wasn't lost on me. 5 years ago, Richard Mitchell had sneered at my little career at my quaint little firm. Now I was running a company that was getting national recognition, designing buildings that would shape Chicago's skyline. And James? I'd checked, just once, given in to curiosity and Googled him. He'd married Vanessa 2 months after our divorce was final. They'd had a daughter. He was still at Cooper & Associates, a senior partner now, just like his father had planned. Good for him, I thought, and meant it. I'd stopped being angry somewhere around Daniel's 2nd birthday. Now I just felt nothing. That part of my life was over. Until 3 days ago, when that resume landed in my inbox. I stared at it now, my coffee growing cold beside me. James Mitchell was applying to be my senior architect. My mind raced through the implications. He didn't know Foster Design Group was my company. The name was different. My LinkedIn had only professional headshots, my hair different, styled professionally now instead of the plain ponytail I'd worn during our marriage. I'd published under my maiden name. To him, I'd simply disappeared 4 years ago, but he'd know the moment he walked into an interview, the moment he saw my name on the door. Part of me wanted to delete the email, pretend I'd never seen it. But another part, the part that had survived and thrived and built something real, wanted him to know. Wanted him to see what I'd become. I forwarded the resume to my assistant. Set up an interview for Friday at 2 p.m. Will you be conducting it personally? She asked. Yes, I said. I'll be conducting it personally. The next 2 days crawled by. I tried to focus on work, on a major project deadline, on Daniel's pre-K parent-teacher conference, where his teacher gushed about his creativity. But my mind kept drifting back to Friday, to what I would say, how I would act. Should I be cold? Professional? Cruel? In the end, I decided on something simpler. Honest. Friday arrived. I wore my favorite suit, navy blue, tailored and expensive. I wore my hair down, the way James had always said he liked it, though that wasn't why I did it. I wore it down because I liked it that way now. I put on the pearl earrings I'd bought myself when I made junior partner. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a successful woman, a good mother, someone who'd survived and thrived. I saw someone who didn't need James Mitchell's approval anymore. At 1:55 p.m., my assistant buzzed. Your 2 o'clock is here. Send him in. I stood by the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline, at the buildings I'd helped design. I heard the door open behind me, heard footsteps, heard the sharp intake of breath when he recognized me. Hello, James, I said, turning around. He looked older. There were lines around his eyes I didn't remember. His hair had gray at the temples. He'd lost weight, but what struck me most was the look on his face. Shock, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite place. Elena? His voice cracked. What are you? How? Please, sit down. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. He sat mechanically, his eyes never leaving my face. I took my seat, folded my hands on the desk, and smiled professionally. Thank you for coming in today. I've reviewed your resume, and I must say, your experience at Cooper & Associates is impressive. He struggled for words. You're the CEO? This is your company? It is. But how? When? Elena, I've been looking for you for 4 years. You just vanished. No one knew where you went. I was worried sick. Were you? The question came out sharper than I intended. I softened my voice. I'm sorry. That was unprofessional. Let's focus on your application. According to your resume, you're leaving Cooper & Associates after 14 years. That's quite a long tenure. What's prompting the change? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered from our marriage when he was stressed. The company's being restructured. Richard is retiring. They're bringing in new management, and they're consolidating positions. I was offered a demotion or a severance package. I see. And your father was okay with this? Something flickered across his face. Pain. My father passed away 8 months ago, heart attack. I felt a pang of something. Not quite sympathy, but close. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? He met my eyes. Elena, where have you been? What happened to you? You just disappeared, I thought. I didn't know if you were alive or dead. I started over. Here in Chicago. Built a new life. Alone? The question hung in the air. This was it, the moment I could tell him. About Daniel, about his son sleeping peacefully in daycare right now, about the fact that he'd missed the first 3 years of his child's life. But looking at him now, at this man who'd cheated on me, dismissed me, made me feel small and worthless for 5 years, I felt nothing but a quiet certainty. That's not relevant to your job application, I said calmly. Elena, please. We need to talk about what happened. About us. There is no us, James. There hasn't been for 4 years. You made that very clear when you chose Vanessa Aldridge over our marriage. He flinched. I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. Vanessa and I. It didn't work out. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you really? Or are you enjoying this? Enjoying what? Watching me squirm. Being the one in power for once. I get it, Elena. You have every right to hate me. I don't hate you, James. I did. For a while. But hate takes too much energy. I stopped caring somewhere along the way. I don't believe that. If you didn't care, you wouldn't have agreed to interview me yourself. He had a point. I sat back in my chair considering him. Why do you want this job? Honestly? Because I'm desperate. Vanessa left me 6 months ago, took our daughter, moved to London with some hedge fund manager she'd been seeing. The divorce wiped me out financially. My reputation in Manhattan is complicated. I need a fresh start. When I saw Foster Design Group was hiring, had this award-winning reputation in Chicago, I thought it was a sign. A sign. A chance to start over. To be someone better than I was. And you had no idea I was here. None. Elena, if I'd known where you were, I would have found you years ago. I looked everywhere. I hired a private investigator. He couldn't find any trace of you. It was like you'd vanished into thin air. I changed my name back to Foster, professionally and legally. I blocked everyone from my old life. I didn't want to be found. Why? Such a simple question. Such a complicated answer. Because I needed to find myself first, I said finally. The woman I was when I was married to you. She was lost. Trying so hard to be enough for you, for your family, that she forgot who she actually was. I needed to remember. And I did. He was quiet for a long moment. You've done incredibly well. This company, your reputation. I read about that building you designed downtown, the one with the vertical gardens. It's beautiful. Thank you. I was an idiot. A blind, selfish idiot. I had someone extraordinary, and I treated her like she was invisible. Yes, you did. Is there any chance at all, that you could forgive me? I looked at this man, this stranger who used to be my husband, and felt a strange sort of peace settle over me. I already have, James. I forgave you a long time ago. Not for you. For me. Because holding on to anger was poisoning me, and I had more important things to focus on. Like your career. Like my life. He nodded slowly. So, is this interview over? Are you going to hire me? Or did you just want me to see what you'd become? Honestly? I don't know. Part of me did want you to see. To know that the woman you underestimated built something real. But another part. I pulled up his resume on my computer. You're genuinely qualified. Your portfolio is excellent. And we do need a senior architect. But I need